Do I need a microphone? You guys can all hear me. So appreciate you guys sticking around. So hopefully a productive couple days here. Selected 3 guys that we liked at various points in the process. Spent significant time with them. So excited to add them to the team. So I think the big thing for us is just try to continue to create as much competition as possible. We can probably, you guys can ask me just some questions here, individual. I'm not going to kind of go through a 1,000-word intro like I did the other day. I think you guys heard enough of that. So, but we're certainly making progress. And like I said, a productive couple days. I'd say even though we didn't pick yesterday, we were, pretty active. We were on the phones and just kind of looking at some opportunities that may have presented themselves, and nothing came to fruition. So we're in a really good position here today. And I think going into it, we had kind of looked at sort of a block of players and a group of players in a range. And kind of if you were to draw kind of a square and a box kind of within that band, we felt if we could get 3 or 4 players kind of in that area, then we'd feel pretty good. And I think the players that we picked were players that we identified and then in those areas. So done picking here for today. Tomorrow we're set to pick at 127. Don't have a 5th, the 2 6s and the 2 7s. So there'll still be some opportunities here for us to add to the roster. Can't say enough about the work the staff has done. And I mentioned it the other day, but it's a credit to, honestly, there's so many people that deserve a lot more credit for where we are just as a team in terms of the players we identified. A lot of communication, a lot of good constructive dialogue, certainly receptive and open to everybody's input and ideas. And, D'Amico's happy and excited. So anytime the head coach is happy and excited, that's a good day. It's a good night. So certainly go ahead. You can ask some questions and kind of go from there.
Made some phone calls yesterday. Did you all consider, or did you all make phone calls today? And how did the influx of offensive players early in the first round make also your thinking, if it did, or you're opposed to it?
Yeah, honestly, the activity yesterday really didn't change our thinking at all. I think you saw, 14 offensive players in a row, which is a record. So you just adjust to the circumstances, and as a result of certain players getting picked, other players maybe available, maybe that you hadn't anticipated. But it's funny, we were probably as active yesterday, even though we didn't pick. So our responsibility and our jobs is try to look for some opportunities. So in trades, and we've talked about this, I've talked to you all about this, trades are a function of just opportunity and a willingness on the other side as well. So we talked to quite a few teams at various points, including today as well. So, and nothing came to fruition. So we picked, and we were comfortable. You always have to be prepared to pick where you're scheduled to pick. And if you feel you can move, then you'll explore it, which we certainly did. It didn't work out, but honestly, it didn't affect, I think, our thought process and our philosophy because of what happened in the first round. I think you saw some trends. So it was kind of 14 offensive players. Then there was a little bit of a spread there from kind of 15 to 32 there at the end. And then today, what you saw, there's a few receivers, I think, that went really at the top. And then you saw a run on defensive players, specifically in the secondary. And then kind of the next run was offensive line. So you started to see those players come off the board. So you're looking at it as you go and saying, okay, if you bypass X, then what is the opportunity cost associated with that? So our approach is just very pragmatic, very thoughtful, very rational, and just pick players that we feel are a good fit for our program. And that's what we tried to do.
With this roster being significantly more built up over now than it was probably when you got here, is it fair to say you were more honed in on maybe needs or wants, and those boxes you talk about being a little tighter?
Yeah, we don't really take a needs-based approach. It's more football player-based approach, and you just can't have enough quality football players. And there might be a situation where a player maybe doesn't play this year, but maybe his opportunity potentially could be more next year because of maybe how the roster is constructed. But we don't have a crystal ball, so we're not going to sort of make any predetermined decisions about a player's role, who fits where. honestly, the competition will sort itself out. I think what we've done, what we've hopefully have done, is just create a sense of urgency. And you have to play well and perform well in order to stay in this building. And if you don't, then we have to keep the 53 best, and then however we put the practice squad together. So I think overall you're just elevating the entire team to the best of your ability, and that's, I think, what good teams try to do. Like, we feel we have a good team. We feel like we'll be competitive. What does that look like? We're all going to find out here shortly, and we'll have a better idea once we get into training camp. So you never force anything. We look at needs or what we think can help our team, or if we were to come out going into the day, I mean, D'Amico and I sat and we said, all right, if we were able to come out with X, Y, Z, how would we feel? And I think it's funny, we were just talking in the draft room and we looked and had a good conversation. It was like, how do you feel? He said, I feel pretty good, So I think in his mind, I think kind of things came out the way that maybe we had hoped or had anticipated. Frankly, we're not really that surprised how the draft kind of fell. I mean, it went about how we thought it was going to go, including, when you look back at where we scheduled to pick at 23, what the options would have been, who we would have picked. I'm sure that's, you all were doing that. So, I mean, we're doing the same thing because you're kind of looking up there going, all right, well, if we had a pick, what would we have done? So, but you just keep moving forward and you keep planning for the next day. And at 42, we knew we were going to get a good football player. At least that was the hope. So hopefully we did that.
When it comes to Kamari Lasser, follow up on Kalen, what did you see from him in the SEC, the kind of competition he was able to play against?
Yeah. I mean, it starts with Coach Smart and, the program that he's put together, he's assembled. I think when you look at the number of players, I mean, I don't know how many Georgia players were drafted today, but it was a pretty significant amount. They had a number of players that played dual roles. I mean, Tyke Smith, who was picked, Bullard, Kamari got picked. Lassiter is position flex. He's played in the perimeter of the formation. He's played inside the formation. I'd say he plays with a linebacker type mentality. I mean, he's a corner, but he tackles. He's tough. He's physical. I'm sure there'll be a question about his speed and how fast he ran, but he's not slow. So, the speed really wasn't a concern of ours. So, the time's the time, but, we're drafting football players. We're not drafting track teams. So, I know speed's important. I'm not saying speed's not important, but we don't feel that that's an issue for this particular player. And when you watch him play in the SEC, you don't walk away and have that concern. So, he's physical. He's tough. He tackles. He has position flex. He's well coached. I'd say Kirby's as good of a coach, and probably, him and Coach Saban are probably good as secondary coaches from a technique standpoint, how they play the ball. He played a lot on the line of scrimmage. He played a lot of press. We have a little bit more flexibility in our coverages, so maybe some of the things that we are going to ask him to do are conducive to his skill set. So, good football player. He's probably one of the top, I would say, makeup kind of players that we identified throughout our process. He's a football player. So we're drafting football players because we're trying to put together a good football team. So I'd say that's kind of where he fits.
And talking to Kalen just about the way he finds the ball, the instinctiveness, what did you guys see jump out on the tape?
Yeah, I mean, it shows up, Aaron. I mean, whatever his production is has been pretty significant, but he's rangy. He covers ground. He plays the ball well. He has good movement skills for his safety. He started his career as a corner. I'm not saying he's a corner, but he moves well for his size. He's 6'2", 190 pounds. Honestly, some of his best football is probably in front of him. He needs to get stronger. I mean, he'll be the first to tell you that. So I think there's some developmental opportunities with him relative to his frame. But you're talking about a guy at 6'2", 190 pounds who ran 4.5 that moves well for his size, plays the ball, is instinctive, is an eraser in a deep part of the field, has to improve as a tackler, which goes back to improving his playing strength. So hopefully our program will be beneficial to him in that respect. So, and he's still an ascending player. He's only 20 years old, like 21 years old. He's a young player. He's been in college for 3 years. Played as a true freshman, so versatile player. So I'd say that was certainly a player that the head coach was excited to get on the team. So anytime you can do that, it's probably a good thing.
What kind of went into selecting Blake Fisher with the second-round pick?
Yeah, good football player. Started his career at left tackle. Moved over there to right tackle when, Alt moved to left tackle. So I think we've always been a big believer you can't have enough tackles on your football team. So when you look at kind of over the last however many years, so, whether it's Charlie Heck, whether it's George Fant, whether it's Jones. So, I mean, Titus and LT are good football players. You need 3 or 4 tackles that you feel can go out there and play. I'd say in Blake's case, 6'5", 6'5.5", 315 pounds, long arms, plays strong, plays physical, played against good competition, well coached. The offensive line coach, former offensive line coach at the University of Wisconsin. So played with JP. So, I mean, I think our program will benefit him, but you can't have enough tackles in your building. So, I mean, right now we have, really 4, including Charlie and David Sharp, who we signed. Blake is another tackle, but we're going to carry probably 4 tackles. So you're going to need 3, and you all have seen us play. At some point, they're going to have to play. Even going back to 22, we had to play multiple tackles. So, I mean, LT didn't play, and then we had to move Titus over, and then Charlie played, so you're going to need tackles. So can't have enough good ones on your team. And I'd say once we picked Blake, I don't know how many offensive linemen went after that, but it was close to double digits. I don't have the exact count, but it might have been 6 or 8. So, I mean, I think Rosengarten went, the kid from BYU went, Goncalves from Pitt went. So, I mean, I'd say those teams have tackles as well. So you need 3 tackles. You probably need 4. You might need more than that. So, I mean, here's another young player with experience. There's a lot of good qualities and traits. So, I mean, that was the reason behind the pick.
You look at right now, Kayvon and Kamari, not only are they position flexible where they played in the slot or at corner, but also they were special teamers all the way throughout their entire college career. Is that something that stood out to you to where you want to be able to maybe allow them to have some role in the team, even if they're not starters?
Yeah. I mean, just philosophically, you're either a starter on defense or a starter on offense or a starter in a kicking game. And if you're a backup, either defensively, probably more defense than offense, I would say the reality is the number of offensive players that have a role in the kicking game, you go around the league, it's minimal. We're fortunate. Let's say Dare is a really good example. There's a running back that has good value in the kicking game. Not all running backs have that value in the kicking game. You'll get a few snaps from some tight ends, but most of your depth in the kicking game is going to come from the linebacker position, the safety position, the corner position. So you're going to have some impact players. You're going to have some special teams only players. You're going to have some combination defensive special teams. So that's always a component because you only take 48 to the game and you take, call it, 20 to 22 players on defense. So your special teams are going to be important. I would say we certainly place an emphasis on the kicking game. It's a big part of the game. It's probably going to be a bigger part of the game here this season, just given some of the rules. So how big of a role they have in those areas, we'll see. You have to find the right fit. Okay, are they perimeter players? Are they corner roles in the kicking game? Are they safeties that can handle responsibilities and the core of the formation on the punt team? We've had MJ's personal protector. Eric Murray's played on the wing. Dare's played on the wing. So let's say with your corners and safeties, where do they kind of fit? So there's a good chance on the perimeter. You're going to need them on coverage units, kickoff coverage, which I'd say will certainly be at a premium. Players that can run and tackle are going to be important. And then on the return teams, you just have to be able to do enough in some of those areas. So it's a part of the calculus. I'd say these particular players probably have a little more value on defense than they do in a kicking game, but hopefully they can carve out some roles for themselves in the kicking game because that overall depth of your team on game day is going to be important. So we'll see how it all shakes out, but they'll be competitive, hopefully, for some roles in that phase.
At the NFL Combine, you had mentioned wanting to find someone to start opposite of Stingley. Given what took place tonight in free agency, how close do you feel that this team is heading in that direction?
Yeah, we'll see. It'll be competition. I mean, Jeff and CJ play a lot of football at a high level. So, I mean, they're both big and fast. They've been here in the off-season program here for the last few weeks, so they're working hard. DK, we re-signed Desmond. So I'd say Miles Bryant's a guy that has kind of a Swiss Army knife safety to nickel flexibility. Say Lasser kind of corner to nickel corner. Bullock safety to whatever else he could do. So you're going to need 6 to 8 defensive backs that can go out there and play. And I mean, look, you're going to have to cover people. So you have to be able to run, you have to be able to cover, you have to be able to tackle. I mean, somebody's going to have to chase Worthy down the field when Mahomes is launching a ball over his head this season. So, I mean, you need 5 or 6 defensive backs. It's a space game. It's a speed game. It's a tackling game. So what happens relative to opposite Derek, we'll find out. So there's nothing that's predetermined. So we'll have a better idea, I think, in training camp how that's going to transpire. But there's a good chance we're going to probably have 5 or 6 corners on the roster. 2 or 3 are going to play on defense. Whoever 4, 5, and 6 are going to be backups. And how diverse are their roles? Going back to Coach's question here, kicking game to defense. So it'll be an interesting exercise here, but I think we've created a significant amount of competition in that area, so which is a good thing.
We'll take a few more.
You mentioned a run on cornerbacks there before y'all took 42. There was also a run on defensive tackles. Were you all at all disappointed that you all weren't able to grab one, and do you anticipate potentially still being able to adjust that position?
Yeah, we'll see. There's some opportunities there. There was a number of players that we liked, and we didn't have the opportunity to add them to our team. I think we're excited about the players that we've added. So, I mean, we've signed some players in for agency. We signed Foley. We signed Tim Settle. We signed Danico. We have some players that have some flexibility there in the front. So, I mean, like we talked about last week or whenever it was, if we had to go out there and play football, we'd be able to put a team out there regardless of whoever we drafted here. So nothing's really changed. So there will be opportunities, I'm sure, between now and September to add wherever we feel necessary. So if we feel there's an opportunity and we feel there's a spot that we need to add somebody, there's going to be players available. So we'll try to make good decisions, and if there's a situation that makes sense, we'll certainly pursue it.
Because you guys have, coming into the draft, I think you guys had roughly like 3 or 4 guys in the defensive back room that were signed through 2025 or after 2024 season. How much did that factor into wanting to get some guys on some rookie deals that you guys could develop while having them at a cost-effective amount?
Yeah, it never really drives your decision. I think you have to take the player in and of itself, the football player, evaluate them. What do you think the role potentially is going to be? Kind of focus on, it's twofold, focus on 24, and then we'll deal with 25 and 25. But like most teams, you have players that are under contract for 24, and then you have players that are under contract beyond 24. So you're going to figure out a way to replenish your team. So whether it's in the draft, when we get to free agency next year. So you're not making decisions solely based off that. So, I mean, I think everybody's going to add young players to their team. I mean, we're not doing anything different than any other team is doing. So, yeah. So, I mean, it's getting people in the building. Once you get them in the building, then the competition will sort itself out, and we'll keep the best players and keep the best people that we feel can help us.
Can you see Blake coming in, moving inside if need be? You alluded to him as a tackle, but I know you've had Titus that come inside. Is his footwork, is he strong enough to be able to come inside?
Yeah, Blake's really a tackle. So, I mean, we'll look at, you never want to say, well, we're just going to move a guy inside just because. So the player may be able to handle it, may not be able to handle it. I'd say not just Blake, but generally speaking, not all tackles can just move inside. I think sometimes there's this propensity to move certain players inside if they're a certain size or whatever the case may be. I mean, we had, Matt Light was called an undersized tackle in New England, but that's one that played tackle for 10 years. So sometimes you get a little bit too cute. You try to say, well, we're just going to bump this guy inside just because. So, I mean, Blake's a tackle. So can a player do something beyond what his original position is? That comes through time. That comes through practice. There's a lot of different dynamics that go into play. I think Titus is definitely unique. I mean, I'd say, Titus is a better tackle than he is an inside player. I mean, I think, that's how we feel. I mean, Titus is honestly one of the better tackles, in the league. So, but you look at your group, you're going to have, you have 8 at the game. So, all right, you got to have a backup tackle. You have to have backup for the inside spots. So are they a backup guard only? Are they a 3-position inside player where they can put their hand on the ball? Can your next tackle also play left tackle? So there's a lot of mechanizations that could take place. So you always want to put a player in a position to accentuate the things that he does well and not just force feeding a guy. There's too many examples, too many times where you just do that, and it's not fair to the player. So we'll see how it goes. But Blake's experience specific to him has been a tackle, so treat him as a tackle. And we always say they're a tackle until they're not.
Cole and
I'll go last. Go ahead, Cole. Go ahead.
Nick, when you look at day 3 compared to day 2, when you saw the run on tackles, you started to see a lot of teams start trading up. Do you view the same way when you see a run on a certain position that maybe you want to covet to move up on day 3 compared to what you would on day 2?
Yeah, it's really just about supply and demand. And it's honestly, at this point, it's where you have the players graded. So you have a certain player graded at a certain level. Then once you lose that category, where's the next break point? How many players are you actually going to have available? I mean, one of the things we'll do in the morning is, okay, at 120, whatever we are, 127, I think. Realistically, what are our options going to be? All right, and it's not, well, we're trading up, like, because, like, we want to trade up. It's to trade up just for positioning, for supply and demand. So it's not necessarily about one player. It's more, what are your options? What are you looking at? So that's how we've always tried to approach it. So, you know, we'll see see what happens tomorrow. Sarge, go ahead.
Nick, you said in the past that, going into the drafting players, it's kind of like a crapshoot. You can get lucky, you can be unlucky. So when you're drafting these guys, especially the ones that you drafted tonight, when you looked at them, did you see that they had that mindset that you all were looking for? You seen the tape, but sitting down talking to them, that they'd have that, what you all consider that swarm mentality?
Yes, Sarge. Honestly, that's a huge part of it. I would say Lassiter, I mean, this is like no question about it. I mean, this is like hands down. So it's actually a huge part of the calculus. And I think our players understand that as well. So when a player comes in the building, they know, they're aware. So are we consistent with our messaging? Are we doing what we say? Are we doing what we believe in? Are we espousing our philosophy at all levels? They know. So our responsibility is to, D'Amico and I's responsibility is to one another, to the coaches, and then in turn to the players. Because if you bring in a player that maybe has some question marks that you know ahead of time, the players are going to look at you and say, all right, wait a minute, like, what's going on here, right? So do you practice what you preach? I know not to oversimplify, but it's a huge part of the decision-making. And I would say specific to these 3 players, I mean, Lassiter without question. Bullock, I mean, great kid. I mean, he's young, but he's a great kid, cares a lot about football. I'm sure you guys will hear about his story. I mean, the fact that he's actually in the position that he is honestly, like, mind-blowing. Like, what he's had to endure, what he's been through. And Fisher is a really solid kid. Going back to what we talked about the other day, I mean, using information and talking to people. So, I mean, JP was a teammate of Blake's, so that's a good resource. So you can get all the information you want, talk to the school, talk to whomever. Okay, when you talk to somebody who was actually in the meeting room with him, what are your thoughts? That carries weight. So again, and then it reinforces, all right, you know what, this guy fits what we're about. He fits our culture. He fits the swarm mindset. And if you start there, then you can put your head on a pillow at night and say, all right, make the right. It doesn't mean you're not going to take chances or maybe take risks, but you have to take calculated risk and then ultimately decide, all right, does this make sense for the entire building, the organization, and for our team? So to answer your question, it's absolutely important, and we certainly prioritize it because we should. And honestly, if you look around the league, look at how these teams are being put together. I mean, more and more teams are prioritized because in the end, you're going to win with people. And when a game is on the line, are they dependable? Are they reliable? Are they going to do the right thing? Are they being consistent? Are they going to be able to handle the pressure? Are they going to be able to handle adversity? I mean, that's real. So we can say all we want about how much talent they have and all that, but in the end, like, it's about mental and physical toughness and your ability to perform under pressure when the stakes are the highest.
Hey, can you just talk about, I mean, you guys have your philosophy of how you approach the draft, and we're always asking, well, this happened, that happened, does it change? How is it, how important is it that you stay true to whatever your philosophy is, which I'm sure builds in for flexibility? Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, it's important. I mean, it just kind of, you want to be consistent, year after year. So are you practicing what you preach? And you're trying to put, and we've been fortunate, like, we feel we have a pretty good infrastructure in place. We have a really good coaching staff. We have a great head coach. We have a supportive ownership group, and we have a lot of other people in support areas that are a big part of what we're doing. So I mean, all that factors in. So, and I've said this from the beginning, that's all we're really trying to do is just put together as consistent a team, as consistent a product year after year, put ourselves an opportunity, give ourselves an opportunity where we have a chance for success. We're not guaranteed anything. It doesn't necessarily mean like we're going to go out there and be 13-4 or 17-0. Like, that's not going to happen. But do you put your team and organization in a position where you have an opportunity, and are you doing it with the right people, and are you doing things that you actually say that you're doing, that you believe in? And I think everybody that's affiliated with our program, whether it's in the scouting department, whether it's in football ops, they see that. And when you stay true to your discipline, people, let's say the belief continues to build. So belief starts with, I would say in our situation, with D'Amico. I mean, I'd say everybody believes in D'Amico and what he's doing. And again, it goes back to the consistency. There's nobody more consistent than D'Amico Ryans in everything that he does, that he believes in. The players see that. We all feel that. So it starts there. Then ultimately it's responsibility of the players, because in the end, we could say all we want to say, but they're relying on each other on the field. Like when there's 80,000 people, like nobody can hear anything, but you can hear the guy next to you. So you're just trying to stack as many blocks in place over the course of time. And when you look at some of the better programs in the league, and we're not there yet. I'm not, believe me, saying that we're in that position. Hopefully we're heading that way. But when you look at some of the better programs, that's what they've done. I mean, there's no better example than Kansas City. I mean, you put them at the top of the list. You put Baltimore at the top of the list. I mean, what Sean and Brandon are doing in Buffalo, there's the competition. So are we putting ourselves in a position where we have an opportunity to compete with those teams? Like, we'll find out. So, I mean, AFC is as competitive as, any league in sport. So, I mean, we know what the challenges are in front of us, and we're not going to run from them, and we're going to try to do our part. And, we're excited about the opportunity in front of us, and, hopefully we just keep doing the right things and just making good, sound decisions along the way. All right, thank you all.
Y'all need to go to Central Market first.
I love Central Market.
All that down.
I love Central Market.